I've never understood clean comedy. I've always been like, I even remember as a kid being, I had like Jerry Seinfeld's album. That was like one of the ones I really liked and listened to a lot. And I like recognized that he was clean. And I remember my mom being like, well, I like that he's clean. And she, who's the other guy? Brian Regan. Like,
yeah,
she'll still send me like clips of Brian Regan of like how he's like a clean comic and stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, but saying fuck is like fun. Like that's like
super fun.
It's like
and Brian's like one of the only ones who can really get me. Like he's a clean comic,
he's funny.
And I've worked with him, and he's really funny, and his brain is so wonderful and weird, and he's one of the only ones that like. Well, and I hate to say it, but growing up, actually doing that Zoom show last night was kind of surreal for me because this is the house I grew up in. We're renting it from my parents.
Oh wow!
And yeah, and
wow, that's crazy.
I know, it's really weird. They had been renting it for a while, and when COVID hit, their renter had moved out, and they were like, we do not, and we were living with 3 kids in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, which was pretty rough.
Wow.
But they were like, we don't want to mess with like going in and out and trying to fix things. My parents are older, and they were just like, we don't want to, try to like go in and out with people. So we agreed to do the maintenance because they were like, we don't want to rent to family. And I was like, my credit score is really going up though. So they finally rented it to us. But I ended up doing stand-up in like the same spot as a child that I would sit with headphones on and listen to records of stand-up. And I stood in the exact spot and did show last night. Yeah, it was kind of cool. And I never like wanted to be a stand-up. I didn't know that was a job you could do, but it was kind of funny. But like, I was obsessed with Bill Cosby as a kid and Steve Martin. Like those were, until later when my stepdad came into the picture, he would like sneak me Richard Pryor and George Carlin. And then later I found out about dirty comedy and I was like, this is way better.
Yeah. I definitely was always like into, I got my mouth like washed out with soap a lot when I was a kid. I loved saying damn and like shit. Like I remember one time my mom was on the phone and I had like a little Fisher Price. It was like, I think it was like Fisher Price Main Street where it's like, there's like this, it was like kind of a big block and there's like all these stores and stuff. And like, I couldn't make the car like go into the like mechanic part of it or something. And I was like, this damn thing won't go in there. I'm like 5. Like my mom had to like, and then also I remember it was like, there wasn't any bar soap. So she used liquid soap.
Oh my God. You really got your mouth washed out, like for reals.
Because
for damn.
For damn, yeah. And I was like, I only said damn. Yeah, but anyway.
Damn wasn't even a bad word in our family.
I think it was the tone for me. Yeah.
Were you raised religious?
Yeah, actually my grandfather was a Southern Baptist minister.
Oh wow.
So he wasn't too like fire brimstone. He was a pretty good guy at a pretty small church that we went to growing up. But yeah. So I mean, like, my dad was a preacher's kid, and then we would go to church like every and then we also, it was weird because we were kind of like the only real kids there that would go regularly, unless like, because it was mainly like my grandfather's a minister. He worked at this big church, and then there was a period in like the late 70s, 80s where you could see it politically, where like the Southern Baptist Church was like, we're going to get involved in politics. And that's kind of what happened where, like the Falwells and like all that stuff, like, became like super politically inclined. And he was like, we shouldn't do that. So he was pushed out of his church, and a couple people went with him. And then, we had this like, they had this really small congregation for a while, and they were all old. So they would like, they would bring their grandkids every once in a while, but we were like sort of like the mascots. So we were like, we would like sing songs and stuff. So it was kind of like, it really wasn't that bad. And I don't actually even remember it being that like puritanical, but it definitely was like, it was a very, very big part of my life. And then he died. And then there was like, we merged with some new church. And then it was sort of like I was in high school and I was like, I was just busy or whatever. And then that was like a good enough reason for my parents to like not make me go to church. And I was pretty much out of, I pretty much didn't believe in it, like very right away, very young, but I really liked like my family and my grandfather and stuff. So I was like nice about it. But then at a certain point then we started going to a church that was like gay people shouldn't get married and shit like that. And I was like, I'm out. Like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah. What about you?
No, not at all. We were raised hippie.
That's
like,
awesome.
We had a sweat lodge and a teepee in the backyard and lived in the woods on and off in my life. I was conceived in a school bus that they had been living in. So it's the kind of upbringing. I lived in a teepee on and off a lot up in the woods when I was a kid. So damn was not a bad word. The only things that were bad words in my house was like the N word. I don't think like you would not have lived through saying in my house. Like my mother would have killed you. But like, and we weren't allowed to use gay as a slur because my lesbian aunt and her wife lived with us. And so like, not that you ever would have, like, but those kind of words were like, not that you wouldn't have gotten your mouth washed out with soap. You would have had 3 women sit down and talk about feelings for 6.5 hours with you, which is the equivalent. It's the equivalent of that. So that's a different level. It was kind of strict, I guess. But yeah, no, very different. So yeah, no religion really. Although my family was like interested in it. Like we would go to church. I think my mom sort of wished we had been raised with something. So we would like attend other people's churches. We'd mooch God off other people. So
spiritual appropriation.
Yeah, I totally. I'm like looking back, I'm like, that's what we did. Is like it was like total appropriation. Like my mom would be like, we're going to a synagogue. It's gonna be cool. It'll be neat. And we would just go and like kind of glom. And I liked religion. Like I remember going to a Catholic mass. I think part of it, it's funny what you said. I liked the attention of religion. I really loved like communion and those things. I love being doted on. And so it's funny when you mentioned yours, I was like, oh, you had an audience very young. It sounds like a built-in.
You know, that's kind of, I never ever looked at it that way until you just said it. But yeah, there was a little bit of that going on. They would kind of trot us out, you know, like, oh, we're going to sing a song. I liked singing the songs. You know, like my grandfather would tell jokes and stuff. And it really did kind of feel like it was a very welcoming. I mean, honestly, if I was like, oh, if everyone had that experience with church, I feel, and he was also a pretty like, one of my best friends was Jewish growing up, and you know, part of the gospel is like you have to accept Jesus Christ. That's the one way into heaven. And if you don't accept Jesus Christ, you're going to hell. So like my little logic brain, I was like, well, Carl's Jewish. Like, what does that mean? And my grandfather's like, well, I think there are many doorways into the kingdom of heaven. And so kind of like workaround thing. And I was like, oh, if everyone had like that kind of like guy leading a congregation or whatever, like the world probably would be a better place. But I basically like, now I'm like, religion is bad. Like, and like I get into, that's what I get now, you know, I say so much crazy shit. I talk about like drugs and sex and everything in my comedy, and I'm sure it drives my parents insane. But the one thing that really will like I can tell truly unsettles people in my family is when I'm like, if I make a joke about Jesus or like anything, because they're just like, well, they really believe it. And I'm just like, I'm like, have you guys actually read the Bible? I read it twice. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, like let me tell you what's going on. But yeah.
Your family, they're still believers then? Like everybody?
Yes. Yeah.
Siblings too?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where my sister is spiritually, but I'm, you know, it's really funny because like same upbringing, obviously, but I went one way and she went another. She's very goody two shoes. Still has never, I think she might have got into CBD recently, like,
ooh.
But
the gateway drug.
Never smoked, never had a drink of anything, never done anything, never cussed, never heard her cuss. So she went that way and I went this way. And so it's sort of like, I don't know, we kind of just don't really talk about it that much. And also I'm like pretty respectful, like, because it's like I don't care that much, but it you know, it's definitely, it's there. But I try to just like be mindful at this point. But I don't know. It's just like, basically everything that's bad in the world is because of religion. So it's just sorry that's true, but that is true.
Why didn't your dad take over? Like you kind of, I don't know. I guess I think of that as a family business, but
no, he was interested. He went to he never went to seminary, but he was taking the types of classes that you would take to become a pastor in college. And then I don't really know what happened. I don't know if it was because he met his mom or met my mom, or maybe started drinking or something, but he then like started taking accounting classes and became a lawyer like somewhere in there. And I think a little bit might have been because, you know, I don't think that they grew up poor by any means, but you're not making, you know, he was a preacher and my grandmother was a teacher. And she was working at a time when like a lot of women really wouldn't work if they didn't have to. So I don't think that they necessarily grew up with like tons of money. So I do think that maybe one thing with my dad was he was like, oh, I could actually make money and do that. I don't know for sure, but he, you know, it is funny because he, like, I think he was like technically like a classics major, which is like, and he like learned like ancient Greek or like the Greek that they would use in the like biblical Greek. And I don't really know what took him away from it, but it is funny. I'm like, oh wow, like we've really fallen far from like my grandfather.
You think?
Like, pastor, lawyer, comedian. I'm like, oh, we're really far from the cross at this point.
So you aren't one of those Russell Brand style comedians who thinks you're a prophet. You aren't.
No. Maybe what are they when they lead a cult? I guess that's kind of a prophet, but no.
Yeah.
More
self-proclaimed prophet.
Yeah, I feel like you're more of like, I feel like comedians were more like, we're sort of like, we all have our own little mini cult. We're all kind of like little investigative journalists, and we're reporting our very own biased version of the news to our constituents, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think of that when like my current partner, he's very honest and he's very like truth based, and like he'll say something to me, and then when you make it into a joke, of course you know, combine like 3 sentences into one, and he'll be like, that is not what I said. I'm like, it is now. As far as anybody's concerned, it's exactly what you said. It's a lot of power, turns out.
Yeah, we get to write the history for sure.
We're spreading the gospel just like your grandfather.
That's funny. It's like the tent revivals is like that's like what we're doing whenever we have a show.
I've always felt like I could absolutely in a minute be a pastor, because I actually, since I was a kid, was always like fascinated with theology and fascinated with religion and God. And it's kind of my same feeling as you, where I'm like, this never ends up well. Nobody's ego ever stays out of starting a cult, you know? Like there's no cult that like they were pretty chill for 60 years and nobody got weird sexually. Like that doesn't happen. And that's one reason, like, because I had for a while when I was doing comedy was like, I don't know, is this what you want to do? And I think I never want to turn, like Russell Brand always makes me glad I had a relapse, because I feel like I like was like humbled enough to be like, oh, okay, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, like, it's funny. You tweeted something forever ago that I've been wanting to talk to you about for so long, but it's one of those things that I'm like, you don't just message someone out of the blue about this. And that was that you said that you do a lot of drugs, and that the only drug that really fucks you up is melatonin. And I just want to tell you, I agree with that, and I feel that so hard, and I've wanted to talk to you about it forever, because people don't believe you, and you're like, no, it's true. Melatonin wrecks me for like a day.
It's really funny. You know, I just have recently, over the past month, like I kind of said earlier, like have gotten better about, is that like so loud? Can you hear?
No, I can't hear it at all.
Okay, good. There's like, it's always on the weekend someone comes and like does a leaf blower literally right by my apartment. always when I'm either doing my podcast or someone else's, but nice thing about the mic is that, okay, hopefully it won't pick it up. But yeah, it's so funny. I've been on a really good, like, sleeping has been my biggest problem forever. And I think that kind of, when I went away, I was a very good kid. Then I went to college, started drinking, smoking weed, doing other things. And like, I think that I already was like a stay up all night kid, couldn't go to sleep. They put a TV in my room when I was in like third grade, and I would just like use it to go to sleep or whatever. And so for a while there, I was like, I just have to try everything I can. And so I did the melatonin thing for a while, and I was taking more and more and more. And then one time I was like, yeah, I'm taking like 10 milligrams. And someone was like, that's way too much to even take. And I'm like, it doesn't even do anything. And then sometimes it would work. And then I'd have the most fucked up dreams. And then I'd literally have those waking life dreams where I'd get up and I'd go about my day and I'd be at work. And then I'd come to and I'm still in bed. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, then it's that weird groggy, like, what is real? Like, did that actually happen or did it not? And it's so funny. I actually did a little research and I listened to Pallavi's episode that you just had on. And she actually was like, Alan, that's really bad. she I think,
oh, that was her?
Because on her podcast, she broke down melatonin and how a lot of these companies, there's no universal way of determining the amount and what's in each pill and everything. So yes, I actually still have the same bottle that I had that inspired that tweet. That was, please kill me. It's definitely just sitting there. And now it's gotten to a point where through sort of intentionally not drinking and not doing anything else, I've been able to I can lie down and go to bed within 20 minutes, which for me is huge. It was at least an hour, at least getting up once or twice, and then, maybe going on the computer or whatever to try to tire it out. But and that's the thing too. I was like, oh, probably one reason why I drank so much and why I like to do that is because it knocks me you don't go to sleep, you pass out. Yeah. So it's that was sort of I guess what I would do. But yeah, man, what, did you ever have crazy dreams on it or what?
Well, kind of everything you said, but it's funny because I had the same thing. I never slept as a kid. I was always, I had insomnia. Everybody in my family has it. And especially this time of year, I can't fall asleep sometimes till 3 or 4 in the morning. I just lay there and I don't know what it is. It's a weird Swedish thing, apparently, because all my mom's side of the family has it. But I just could never sleep. And so, yeah, I think I started drinking and doing drugs really young and did it until kind of the opposite. I started at 12 or 13. And then I did it until about age 20 when I had my son. And then I was okay, no more drugs. And then I popped in and out a few times. But I never have been able to sleep. And I started taking melatonin. And 4 years ago, I was touring like crazy. And on the road, I was taking it's funny because when you say 10 is too much, I'm like, oh, that's terrifying. Because I used to take, when I get done from a show, you get back to the room, you're still kind of pumped up on coffee and adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And I would have a 5:30 flight. And so I'd be like, well, I'm just going to take a bunch of melatonin. And I would take 40 milligrams.
Oh, wow.
And I would just take like 5 or 6 of them. And then I would be able to sleep. But then the next day would, like you said, feel like a dream. All day I would feel sort of confused and out of it. And even now, now I rarely take it, but I stopped because I was I feel not only do I have really fucked up dreams and very vivid, but the next day I kind of just feel confused all day.
Yeah.
I just feel odd and off. And I've done a ton, when I started doing LSD and stuff when I was 13, and I've done a ton of hallucinogens and stuff like that. And nothing has ever fucked me up like melatonin, where I just all day I'm what is real? What is happening?
It's weird. It feels like you're in a Tenet movie or some or whatever, Christopher Nolan movie, where you're just wait, was that lamp always there? It's not like a Hangover vibe. It's a really weird, unsettling thing. But yeah, it's just funny too that I'm just it's natural. It occurs in the body. But it's also funny, too, when I'm how am I going to get out of this problem that drugs have led me to? maybe more drugs. Maybe something else I can put in my body will fix me.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of like getting sort of over that, and being able to sleep has been like a lame, nice little reward for myself.
Yeah. I had like 3 years ago, I had just gotten out of treatment and I was meditating and doing yoga. And at that point, when I would lay down, I would fall asleep in like 15 seconds.
That's great.
Like it was like, have you ever dated somebody who does that, where they're just like, they lay down and they fall asleep
annoying.
and then it's so, I am like, I hate this person. And I was that person for like a year. And it was amazing. And I was just sleeping like crazy. And then, I don't know, it went away. And I've been chasing that dragon for the last 3 years. I was just like, what's happened?
The time that I really was able to sleep a lot, and I think this is kind of coming back too, because I've really like literally since, I think it was the Saturday when they were like, when they called Pennsylvania. Then I think starting that Sunday or that Monday, I've gone on like a really nice long walk or hike every day. And that helps a lot. And when I was in high school, I was so stressed. Everything was so important. AP, I was in this program, all this shit, and like, the SATs and practicing all this stuff. But I did cross country, and I just got in this routine where when I would, and then I kind of got addicted. Looking back now, I'm like, I was addicted to working out and running and all that stuff. I would run constantly. During my run time, I would like study in my head. I would study all the stuff I needed to go over. And then when I would come back, I would run in more. Right when I got up, I'd go to school, I'd go to practice, and then I'd run a quick little mile or something right before bed. And after I would take my shower and get in bed, it was lights out. It was just like, I'm done. And so, but then I'm like, God, I have to do all this work to go to sleep. It's like so much. I have to literally like tire myself out. But yeah, it's been pretty, I've been enjoying this sort of like, I mean, today, it was actually kind of funny. Today, I smoked a lot of weed last night before I went to bed, and I stayed up until like 1, which I haven't done in a long, couple weeks. And I definitely, this morning I woke up and it was like, I was like, man, I shouldn't have drank last night. I'm like, wait, I didn't drink last night. Like, I'm just groggy because I stayed up too late. I'm like, oh, this is cute. I remember this.
That's like, as you get older. How old are you?
I'm 34. I'm going to be 35.
34. Yeah. As you get older, it's weird because that was one thing with touring, as I started to notice, I'd be like, I just feel hungover because I went to bed at 3 and got up at 7. And all day I would be like, oh, I'm so hungover. And I'd be like, no, you're sober. You haven't had anything. And I would just be exhausted. And I was like, this is bullshit. This is not fair.
And especially with touring, like, it's funny. I was supposed to do Portland in that weird gray zone where no one knew what to do yet. But I think if I had done the show in Portland, it would have been illegal because it was like more than 25 people or whatever. I don't mean to brag, but I can bring 25 people to a club.
26 sounds like.
20, I mean, hey, Well, I was kind of myself in the 25. No, but I definitely was sort of like doing the thing when, like I went on a tour to prep for my half hour. I got some stuff out of that. And it really, I'm like, oh God, I'm the comedian in my 30s now that I'm like, look, if I don't do drugs, I'm not going to be up. And if I do, it's going to wreck me. And if I don't, it's going to wreck me. So it was funny because like I was supposed to do the Portland thing, but right before that, I did get to go to DC and I did the Draft House in Arlington. And it was, or no, actually, I think I did the Draft House in DC proper. But it was so fun. And I was like so excited to go on the road again and really start doing that again. And I was like, oh, this is great, like getting some traction and everything. And then everything shut down. And in retrospect, I'm like, I probably really needed this time to do that, which I don't want to, it's not all about me or whatever, but I am kind of glad that like I was able to sort of do, and who knows, maybe tomorrow I'll get drunk and be drunk again forever. But I was just like, I'm like, oh, maybe it's okay that this is kind of like calmed us, or hopefully calmed us down. Obviously it affects everyone differently, but I'm like feeling it's really weird. Like as terrible as it is, I'm like definitely the most zen about it with everything, comedy, work, the virus, politics, whatever you want to say. I'm trying to just kind of be like, let's just get the fuck through this thing.
Yeah. I've wondered if that's because I actually do, like, because I feel the same way. Through this whole thing, I felt pretty good and pretty calm and like, you know, never did anything self-destructive, you know, like since March, I've just kind of been like, yeah, you got to take walks and eat healthy and been like pretty decent to myself. And I wonder if that's just because I do so well in a crisis that the fact that we've been in a crisis just means I'm actually thriving. But if we were in a calm, happy, steady point, I would be burning things down because I never can deal with that.
It's so funny you say that because like, kind of like, you know, once it started happening and like the economy really took the hit and like, you know, Trump really started to spiral before even the election. But when it kind of just looked like, oh my God, like America is failing the test. We are doing badly. That's when I was like, I have my shit together more than the country. That's bad.
Yeah.
That is not good. I'm supposed to be like a fuck up or whatever. And it was like, okay, well, we really like, you know, that kind of led me to be like, oh God, what, you know, we have each other, you know, I have a roommate, which is kind of like perfect setup during this whole time because we have like a big place. So we're not on top of each other. There's someone there when you want some socializing, you know, but you don't have to be, you know, I know so many couples and stuff that are like going at it and I've a couple divorces and stuff like that. But, it's really been a weird thing where it's like, we are definitely all, I mean, literally, we're going through something completely global, and yet it still does feel like so much of it is up to you and how you weather the storm or whatever you want to say. Not to say that I am not a person that thinks you can work your way through everything, or I think some things are insurmountable. I think sometimes you do need help. But it really, you know, it's just been like a crazy fucking, I feel like we all deserve something at the end of this.
I know. Yeah.
We all deserve something.
Like everybody should get an air fryer or something. I don't know. Like just somebody should send everybody a gift, you know? I just like I totally agree.
That's what Biden should, it should be, the vaccine should be free and we get an air fryer.
Everybody gets an air fryer and the vaccine. And yeah, I feel like that's definitely the way to go. Sorry, there's cats having sex outside of my window, so that's nice of them.
Please never apologize for any sexual activity.
They look. The weirdest thing is, you know what? It was just it was a try and go. Either that or cats have sex very fast, but they look like exactly the same cat. Is the weird thing about it too. So I don't
Narcissist.
know.
Narcissist cat.
Okay.
It's so funny too because do you have a dog? Is that a dog behind you?
That's
so it's
there,
like while you're saying that, the dog was like just licking itself.
Thanks, great. Hey, Chip. Well, he's also deaf, so you can't even.
Oh,
like, Chip,
cute.
Quit it. He's all.
Hey.
No. He's a million years old, and that's all he ever does. It's perfect. This is the kind of dog I like to have. Is one that just lays there and never. He's like part of the furniture.
It looks
doesn't
nice.
do anything. Yeah,
Looks comfy.
It's a life. Well, I've just realized I forgot to intro the podcast, which is a pretty common thing. So I'm going to do that really fast.
Great.
Because we just sort of jumped in. So, hi, welcome to What's Next with Arnold. I am joined today by someone I think is very funny, and he has a Comedy Central presents half hour. Is that right?
Yeah, that works.
I think I said that.
I think technically it's 21 minutes, I think, but
20. He has 21 minutes on Comedy Central, and he's been on Conan a couple times. He has a really funny and wonderful podcast called the Male Gaze Podcast. Please welcome Allen Strickland Williams. Yay!
Hey, it's been great to already be here.
I know. We've been here for 40 minutes. I pretty regularly forget to intro. I just get talking and then I'm like excited. And this is funny. I think this is like technically not the first time we've met, because we did meet one other time.
Yeah, where did we meet? I was trying to think of that the other day. I'm like, was it at a festival or what? Were you in town?
Okay, so we maybe have met twice, because the first time we met actually was at where's Hot Tub?
At the Virgil.
At the Virgil. We met at the Virgil, and you were coming out of the bathroom. And I was like, I have like very bad facial recognition. And I was like, oh my God, hi. And you were like, hi. And we hugged. And I was like, Allen, right? And you were like, yeah. And I was like, Emma. And you were like, oh. And then we were like, how do we know each other? How do we know each other? And then you walked away, and I realized I knew you from television is where I knew you. We'd never met before. I'm just very confident. And so that was our first introduction. And then I think we did meet at a festival after that too.
That is exactly like Virgil though, because the way that whole plate, was it for the show or was it for
I can't even you were on the show. You were on a show. It might have been for Hot Tub. I can't remember.
Either way, the way that whole place is set up is, I always think of it like whenever I'm there, I always do a lap, because if I just do a lap, I'll see everyone and I'll say all my hellos, and then I can and so I'm sure I was just in oh yeah, I always see people.
I was doing the same thing. I was going like, hey, yeah, and after it, I was like, oh no, you don't actually know him. That's fine. No, now I do. And then I feel like we did a festival together, but I can't think.
That's where I thought the memory was, but yeah, I definitely remember. I just knew that we had met. I just knew that we had actually met at some point.
And then I just have always loved your comedy, and you are friends with a lot of people I love and I'm friends with too. So I've always just been like, Allen's good people. I love Allen. And
yeah, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of good things to say about Emma Arnold.
Yeah, same with you. Yeah. And you were friends with Eric and Drew, so they're like a perfect litmus test for me of like if someone's a good person, if they're in that circle, then I'm like, okay, all right, okay, yeah. You have good people around you. So, and I really. I think the first time I saw you do comedy was your Conan set, but then when I saw you live, I did just think you were so fucking funny. And,
thank you.
Yeah, and it's as an outsider who would come to LA, like when I first started going, I'd be like a nervous wreck, and you think everybody's funnier than you because I was coming from Idaho and I was just like a basket case, and then I would get down there and be like, oh, this is just kind of like comedy anywhere.
Yeah.
And usually I would not be like, not to be a snob, but you'd just be like, oh, this is just like a scene anywhere. It's not like some special golden place where everyone is funny. But you were definitely one of the people when I saw, I was like, I'm intimidated now.
No. I'm nothing. I'm a speck of dust.
I'll make sure to, that will be the little like blip we use from this. I'm nothing. I'm a speck of dust. Well, let's hop into the podcast questions.
Cool.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
2 of them I ask everybody. 1 is catered just to you.
Oh.
But the first one is I
didn't know this would be catered.
It's catered. It's just for you. I always come up with a question just sort of specifically for that person, which is just something I've always wanted to know or something I'm curious about. So the first one is, what's the closest you've ever come to dying?
Okay, the closest I've ever come to dying is pretty easy answer. I was in a lift with my friend in the back, comedian Richard Bain, and it was like 3 a.m. and we were in a lift. We were like partying. We were trying to hit on this girl together. We waited for her to get her lift. She left. We got ours. As we were leaving in Eagle Rock, we were driving and a car pulled up next to ours and a guy leaned out with a gun and fired into our car. Like literally hit the driver and like bullets over our heads. And we were in the back, obviously. Thank God one of us wasn't in the front. And everyone,
Whoa.
It was obviously insane and traumatic, but we survived. We didn't have any physical damage. And then the driver was hit and it was very scary, but he survived from what we heard about it at least. So I'm pretty sure that's, unless there's like an embolism waiting to happen inside of me or something, I'm pretty sure that's the closest so far.
Wow. So he got shot and then what happened? Did they drive away?
So it was like, so we don't, it was so crazy because it really was, we were in the car for like a good, I want to say 7 minutes. There wasn't anyone following us. It was late at night. When the cops arrived, they were really trying to push a road rage narrative, which it just wasn't. I don't know if it was some sort of like gang initiation or drug fueled night or an attempt at a carjacking or something, but it was just totally random violence. So they just pulled up, and this happened while we were moving. So they shot, I think they fired like 6 or 7 times. They're like, my window was up, Richard's was down, and like so there were 2 bullet holes in the window. So at least 2 shots went over us. Richard really fast realized what was going on and got us down. And then the guy, he fired a lot into the front and then drove away. And so obviously he lost control of the car. And I don't know how we didn't hit. There are all these parked cars on the street. We somehow missed them all. He went up on the curb. Oh, wow. He hit a, what do you call it? Fire hydrant. And then somehow swerved back out onto the road. And then eventually the car just stopped. And so then I didn't realize that I was calling 911 when I was getting out of the car. I was already on the phone with 911, and then we kind of laid down until we saw blue lights. But then even then, I was like, these cops are going to be. It was in the height of not the height of this past summer, but it was very much like police committing accidental murder and everything, or whatever you want to say. I was like, let's be really slow and everything getting out. But yeah, they drove off. I'm sure that at some point they probably got in trouble somehow, but yeah, they never found them or anything. Wow. So yeah, it was totally in motion. They just kept driving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you terrified, or were you kind of just weird?
No,
how did you react?
It was, in the moment, it was kind of insane. It was we, it was not like that, not today, a lot of we were both drunk and stuff. I think we both probably had drugs on or in us. And so it was definitely for 3 days, we didn't go apart. We did everything together, and we partied our way through it, and then sort of just whatever. And then it was PTSD. There were times when if I was driving, I just started working a day job, and so I would go to work, and then it was this time of year, so then it would get dark. So then I would go to work in the morning. The office I had, there were no windows, and then I'd come out at night, and I'd be driving home at night, and I'd be like, oh, I need to pull over and cry, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that lasted for a while, and then it was really weird because it was bad, but I kind of just sort of powered my way through it. I think maybe it was either New Year's or July 4th when I went to a party and there were a bunch of fireworks, and I was like, okay, this sucks. And then Richard and I specifically, I how if a big truck goes over part of a road, it'll go clunk clunk. That would always and will still even kind of get me. But for the most part at this point, it was 2 years ago now. For me, I really do feel I kind of worked through it, and I was already in therapy, so that was kind of already had that going on. And then when also Richard took his life this year, during the pandemic. Once that happened, I just immediately was let's try meds. I've never done meds. I've never been on anything, because my anxiety was really, really spiking to a level that I knew what was going on. So I got on Zoloft, and I've been on Zoloft since then. And honestly, it's been really okay, but I think a lot of that is because, and this is kind of my relationship with Richard just in general, was it was kind of easy for me to be together for him. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of helped me do it for me too. So it was obviously so terrifying. I mean, it was like a movie. Like it was really like a crazy movie. And to the point where I remember watching like some sort of Die Hard type movie, you know, maybe a week or two after, and I was like, maybe not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously, yeah, it was funny because I was like, well, I know what I'm going to talk about when when I'm asked me about this, because it's like, you know, a relatively safe life. I've had some health stuff or whatever, but you know, that, you know, those are those crazy things that it's like, you know, yeah, I mean, it happened in one of the more residential parts of LA. So I guess it's like urban living on some level, but it really was just, you know, and what I try to tell people that deal with like anything, you know, you kind of get known as like, oh, well, talk to Allen, he went through something crazy or whatever. It's like, there's no reason why it happened. And the faster you can like let go of why it happened, and why it happened to you, you know, I think the more successful you are going to be in moving past it.
Yeah. But that's, you know, I knew you had lost a really good friend in Richard, but I didn't realize like you also sort of lost this person who went through something crazy and shitty with you, which really is tough because it's, I don't know, you sort of trauma bond with someone over that.
Yeah, we would always say we were like trauma brothers, like after that. Like, and that was, you know, the other story I'll tell about it is the night that it happened, for some reason, Shia LaBeouf had just been on the New York Charlemagne, I think, show with like Charlemagne the God, where you do 5 Fingers of Death, like rap, like pretty much improv rapping. They like give you some bars or whatever. And he just, the whole night, Richard was just like, you got to listen to Shia's 5 Fingers of Death, blah, blah, blah. So we finally listened and I'm like, yeah, this shit is actually really good, Richard, like whatever. And then everything crazy happens. We kind of forget about that. And then I'm like, hey, it's a year anniversary of this terrible thing. I'm like, you saved my life. Let me buy you a steak. We went to this place called Columbo's in Eagle Rock. I was like, let's go to Eagle. And he lives around there. So I was like, let's go there. There's like a weird jazz band. We'll have steaks. We'll get drunk. It'll be great. And we're having a good time. And then I like out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, what? And I pointed, and it was to the day Shia LaBeouf walked in with his, whoever he was dating at the time, walked in and sat down at a booth at the restaurant. And we were just like, we just lost our minds to the point where then like the people like doing the music were like, what is going on over here? And they're like, is this like an anniversary or whatever? And Richard was like, kind of. And they were like, well, what should we play? Like, what do you guys want to hear? And I was like, do you know That's Life by Frank Sinatra? And they were like, we actually do know that one. So they played that, and Shia was just like, was looking over at us and clapping, and we were just like, this is so
wow.
So like, you know, how those little, the universe were winking at you, as Richard would always say. But yeah, it was definitely the type of thing where it's like, oh fuck, like, you know, and there's a lot going on. I think that really did shake Richard in a way, and he did not have he wouldn't go to therapy, you know, tried, you know, holding his hand to get him to do all this stuff that he would never do. Had a lot of problems, you know, before that, caused a lot of problems. And so it's just sort of the type of thing where it was like, you know, even like talking about like my sister, how we like grew up to be so differently. It's like, it is truly so insane. I'm not, obviously I wish that hadn't happened, mainly for the poor driver, but it's the type of thing too, where in a lot of ways I'm like, well, it really does show you like everyone deals with everything differently. Some things that are a huge deal to some people are not to others. Some things stay with you, some things don't. But yeah, that's definitely like the closest. And then, you know, with any trauma stuff, it, you know, it has these sort of echoes of reverberations that sort of like will continue to show themselves to you over your life, which I'm definitely in more of that phase now with it. But yeah, just a crazy ride, you know.
That's a first on the podcast for sure, because you know sometimes people
what's next?
Like,
exclusive.
Well, and I imagine like sometimes people will tell sort of a story where you're like, I mean, for me, I'm always like, that's the closest you've ever, like Arlo and I were laughing because we as children came close to dying. We were very unsupervised. So we came close to dying 1,000 times.
Right.
But so when someone like never has come close to dying, I'm like, wow, really? That's fascinating. But you have like a real, like you dealt with your mortality after that, I imagine. Like you really had to sort of think about that. Like, because totally. You're like, what, a foot away from dying.
Literally, whatever it was, like, and like not a touch on us. Not even like glass that got into, and like we checked each other, like we were looking for ticks or whatever. But it's kind of thing too, where it was like, it was funny because so many people were like, oh, I bet that really like, affected your sense of mortality or whatever. It's like, it's not like I was necessarily living like a straight laced life before this, like the whole like live each day like your last, like I've been doing that for a while. I feel like now I've kind of been able to tap into the like, oh, life can be long. And I think that a little bit comes more with Richard's death than that actual act that I went through. But like, wanting to live a long life, wanting to make something of it, it definitely did. What's so crazy is it happened. Like I had a really bad year that year. I got in a car wreck that totaled my car. That wasn't my fault. I had just started working like Postmates. So I was like just trying to get my shit together. That happened. Really long year, a lot of failures, a lot of personal success or career failures. And that was like, and then I got the half hour, and I remember thinking while it was happening, I was like, man, they haven't even released the press release yet about it. I was like, I'm going to die a failure in the backseat of a Lyft, whatever. But, that I was like, I was like immediately laughing at myself about that, about being like, that's what went through my head. And but then it really did, like, in a lot of ways, the main thing I think I think in the back of my head, I'd always kind of been like, I'm pretty confident in like the way I want to live my life. It definitely gave me that. It definitely gave me the thing where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to waste any time with anyone I don't want to waste time with. I don't want to be, it helped me a lot with confrontation and communication, because it's made me be like, well, I survived that. Like what could be, like, oh, someone's going to be mad about a conversation we have, or if I'm afraid to assert myself in a certain setting because it might look bad. I'm like, no, I'm just going to do that now and, deal with the repercussions as they come. But it's the type of thing where I think it definitely did push me to be like, well, Al, how do we want to live our life? How do we want to do this thing for the rest of time or whatever? And I feel like, I'm pretty happy with those decisions. But yeah, it definitely is sort of like, whether you like it or not, it's like, okay, you got to think about this stuff now.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because at first I had kind of thought maybe you would do a drug related story, but then I was like, no, actually Alan's better at doing drugs than anybody I know. Like it's not going to be a drug. He's good at doing, like, cause some people are bad at it. And that's why they have a, like, my heart stopped, story is you actually seem like you're not, I wouldn't call you a moderate exactly, but you seem to have for years I've spent time in
the lab. Okay. I've spent time in the lab. I've checked the numbers. It's the type of thing too, where, that's sort of like a cool, I'm like getting off on you saying that, because I'm like, oh yeah, I love to be like the person that's in control that can still do all the fun stuff. But at a certain point, it's like, that's more of a narrative you're telling yourself than really truth.
Yeah.
So it's the type of thing where I'm like, it only takes one time for you not to have it under control, for then not only that to be proven as a lie, but like, then it's like, if you do die, people are like, oh, well, he was always such a fuck up or whatever, stuff like that. And that kind of did make me think like, I definitely was like that. I'm like, oh, and a lot of people didn't even believe both of us, because Richard more than me, but like, little rascal kind of energy of like, what's real or what it's not. Like a lot of people didn't believe it was true. And then, I came up with a bit about it that now I kind of have to rework a little bit, I think, based on how, because I used to like open a joke with like, how did I use, fuck, it's so funny, you forget how you do these things. But I used to be like, okay, I'm going to tell a joke about the time I almost died, but everyone's okay. Like that, and I'll be like, wow, isn't that a fun way to start a joke? Everyone's okay. But you know, so now I'm sort of like, oh, well, maybe there's more to it now. But I think that helped too. Talking about it, obviously in therapy, I'm not a big open, I'm emotionally person. It definitely brought me to a place where I can be more open emotionally. And, you know, now also I have something to contribute, you know, for the most part, you know, living a pretty sheltered life. I had some hospital things when I was a kid that were very scary. I don't think I was actually close to death, and I definitely couldn't even understand it as such as I could now, obviously. But now it's like, I'm also like, well, let's have something to contribute to the conversation or some point of reference for if someone else has gone through something harrowing. And talking about it on stage, definitely it's so cliche, but it was the type of thing where I'm like, okay, now I've put it in its little box. Now I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like now I'm in charge of it or whatever.
Yeah, it is weird how like once you make a joke about something, it is like you've compartmentalized it and it's become part of something that now you have control of and you take off the shelf. And it's in therapy, when I first started doing EMDR, that's what my therapist would have me come in, and we had like an imaginary file cabinet that we would like pull my bullshit out of. And at the end of the session, we would put it back in and lock it and like leave it in the office, which is a nice way to do like trauma therapy stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But I've always felt like comedy's kind of similar to that. You know, you can kind of just be like, okay, we're touching this hot thing, but I've put it into a something that makes me feel in control of it, you know?
Yeah. So. And sort of like walking the audience through, it's almost like you're using the reflection of the audience to like, you know, because you drop something like that and it, you know, people will react. And so you kind of see that, and then it's almost like, you know, I feel like comedy is stand-up's very masturbatory, the best parts, and you know, it's very much that sort of thing where it's like, oh, hold on, let me walk you through this. Really, I'm walking myself through it, but like you guys are gonna laugh, so it's okay. But yeah, for sure.
It is super masturbatory, and I think I really realized and accepted it for the first, because I've always been like, this is about connection for me. This is about vulnerability, and like, you know, like I think
masturbation is about those things too.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't realize. And yeah, because last night when I was doing that Zoom show, I was like, this has always been for me. This is definitely for me.
Yeah.
I just didn't notice, you know, because I think, I don't know. Yeah, you're totally right. Masturbation should be vulnerable and all those things too. Which is one thing, you know, like I had stopped watching porn for a long time, and I found like, boy, nothing gets you intimate with yourself like masturbating with yourself instead of something else, you know, like, ugh, it's so rough. So it's like comedy, porn, it's all related. It's all connected.
Yeah, I lit a candle recently while I was masturbating, and it was so nice. It was like it was also as a joke, I bought the one of the Gwyneth Paltrow it smells like in my orgasm candle or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, yeah, this is nice. Yeah. Like, yeah, just a nice Bath and Body Works style situation.
The treatment program I went to was for addiction, but specifically for sex addiction. And that was one of the things they said is that like when you start so you do like 90 days of abstinence from everything essentially. But then when you're ready to start masturbating again, that's what you're kind of supposed to do is like sit in front, like you're supposed to be able to do it sitting in front of a mirror, making eye contact with yourself, doing it like as a loving gesture of intimacy where you're like getting to know your body and appreciating yourself. And that is really hard in the beginning, especially. It's really to like make eye contact with yourself it made me realize like how shy I was more with myself than any other person, you know, that I would be like,
I'm like, can you do it? Can we do it the other way?
I'm going to close my eyes because I can't. It's weird. It was so, and like, that's what you were supposed to like really, there was a book that they had recommended that went along with it, which is The Women's Anatomy of Desire, which is a fabulous, fabulous book for anybody of any gender to read.
I want to read that.
It's wonderful. And that was a big part of it is like how to make love to yourself, how to fuck yourself instead of just like sort of jerking off. And but it takes a lot of self-intimacy. And it was funny because doing comedy last night, I was like, oh, this feels so similar, because I have to just sort of be like, I just had to sort of like be there alone, but also be like, I need to be enjoying this, which is so weird, because as a person who's been highly sexual my whole life, I had realized very late that I was like, I have been doing this for the serotonin and not for the actual pleasure, for a long time. Like a lot of things, like comedy, sex, drugs, all of it. Like realizing like, oh, I'm doing this for the dopamine dump and not for the actual like intimacy and pleasure of the thing.
Totally.
Which is a whole other podcast, really. Well, so it sounds like, and this is kind of, you said you were raised religious, and I usually ask like, we'll ask it in a kind of a two-parter, but so you went through this, you recently lost a close friend, and I'm wondering like, what do you believe about the afterlife? But also, what do you wish was true? Because I'm assuming since you left religion and stuff, you probably don't believe in much of an afterlife, but like, what do you wish was true?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of framing the question too. Like I kind of don't think about it that much. I definitely thought about it more when you lose someone that's really close to you. You want to be, and Alyssa, who dated Richard for a long time, funny comic, Alyssa Rusak, she was, and he put her through hell in some ways, but she's like, now he's like 100% uncut Richard. And I'm like, I like that. I like thinking about it like that, where it's like, it's sort of, I think kind of answering both questions, the way I do kind of think about it is, it's sort of the ultimate release, because it is like, you are truly being like, the way I see it, you're going to nothingness or returning to nothingness. I don't know if you want to say that, but it's something the last time you experienced it, you don't remember because you weren't there. And then, this time maybe it'll be different. Maybe there's nothing to it, but I think look at it still as, I think Marin or someone had a joke where it was like, my big thing too is like big suicidal ideation. Like since I learned what it was, I thought about it constantly. Not as a depressive thing. Once it got to that point, then I was like, okay, let's do something about this. But literally as like a break, as like an imagination of like getting away from the problems or whatever. So I think, I kind of think it's like that. I think it's like, nothing. There's just nothing. Like there's no worries. There's no pain. Obviously you can't experience pleasure, but I feel like the absence of all the bad things is sort of like almost a reward. That's not saying I'm racing to it at this point in time, but yeah. And then, selfishly, your brain and your heart will imagine what you don't think is true, which is, oh, Richard's like skateboarding in heaven and selling Molly to Hitler or whatever. Like, like
Hitler's in heaven in your afterlife,
or he's or Richard's in hell, or heaven and hell are the same thing. They're just like divided by a one street or something. But yeah, so that's sort of like this sort of cartoon Care Bears like part of it. But I also try to, with all that stuff, is like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if there is like a second level, like once we're done and we have a different body or whatever. But, if we do, I hope it's a little better than this time around. But if not, I'm sure we'll all find a way to have fun or something. But yeah.
Yeah, I've wondered if, not necessarily by design, because I'm not saying we were designed in any way, but I feel like getting old is a really good preparation for death. Like I've taken care of family. It is, because
it's so funny though, because it's like, that's just very funny, Emma. Sorry.
Well, because it's so like, I've taken care of people who, like my grandfather had dementia. My grandmother, she sort of lost her mobility as she was dying, and we took care of her for like a year or two. And I've taken care of people up into their deathbed, multiple people, like, or it helped, not me personally, but my whole family. And it's, we have a big loving family, so you do help out. But, and 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 I have been sick, very sick for like the last year on and off, and getting better. But like, that's kind of why I started this podcast, is because I had a couple near-death experiences and kind of went like, oh, I kind of like just got more curious. I've always been kind of a gothy kid interested in this stuff, but like got more interested in it. But it's weird because even just being this level of sick, it kind of, you sort of experience old age early. And I have been like, man, it is funny. Like your body starts to deteriorate.
Yeah.
And I've watched that in people. And maybe you do hit a point where you're like, my grandma Lee, who is the most amazing person, when she died, she was 93, perfect health, perfect, like all the way with it, right till up until the end, where she just kind of like a dog. Like, I don't know if you've had a dog who died of old age.
Yes. Yeah.
But they kind of just like slow down and fall apart. And that's what she did. And by the end, she was just in bed and she was very peaceful. And we were all, with her and stuff. And when I had talked to her about it and was like, Grandma, are you scared? She was like, oh, I'm ready. Like, she was tired. And I wonder if that, like, if you're lucky enough to get to live to an old age, if in like being tired and I don't know, just your body falling apart and everything. Or if I wonder if some people are still like at 95 terrified, like just like, no, I wanted 6 more years, like
I'm sure
there has to be people like that.
Yeah.
Who are just terrified of it.
I would say I grew up around a lot of old people. Like, I definitely went to more funerals growing up than to like weddings and stuff like that. My great grandmother, she lived to like 96. She took care of her husband, who basically had like a series of mini strokes. She took care of him for like 3-4 years after he probably should have gone. And then my grandfather, the pastor, he went really fast because he had a brain tumor. And so he had brain cancer, and they did surgery, but it wasn't enough. And then pretty quickly after that, he was gone. And like, you see it happen. You see someone like fall apart, whether it's by design or something else. And that too was I think a lot of that definitely had a big role in like sort of moving away from religion, where it's like the sort of doubts were really cemented by, I'm like, he's really the best person in our family and he's dying of brain, like in this terrible way. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And he's like God's helper. Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? So like, I think seeing it too is like, it put death on my mind a lot. And it kind of did make it seem like the ultimate sort of, it's over. That's the punchline. It's like, we're all gonna meet that fate, in some way or another. So it is just sort of like, there's a calm to it. There, like, the fact that I know that it's over at some point is reassuring. I'm not the type of person like, but, and not that I needed that kick in the pants of that, the traumatic incident or whatever, but, obviously we would all have things we'd change in our lives, but for the most part, I'm like, I don't know. I've done a lot of stuff I wanted to do, and I like my friends and stuff. I'm like, I'm not dying to get out of here now, but the time comes, hopefully I'll still have that mentality of like, I did what I wanted to do, live life the way I wanted to live it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way, where I feel like I probably have lived like one of the most full lives a person could live. Like, I've lived in like a whole bunch of places and done a whole bunch of really wild things, and, got to do just got to do a lot of like really fun things. And, I still have a lot more that I want to do, but I kind of feel the same way. I feel like I don't really have a lot of if I was to die now, I would have regrets for my kids. Like, I want to see them grow up. And also just, when you're a parent, you're sort of like, oh, light at the end of the tunnel. And then it was like this year where I realized, I'm like, I see, you're never done. You're never done. Because like, I have needed my parents so much in my life, where I'm like, I'm a mess, help, I'm going through a divorce, help me again. And they're like, okay, like if your parents are good parents, they're pretty much your parents for the rest of your life, and they're there for you. So I would like to be there for my kids when they go through a divorce, or, foreclose on a house or whatever. Hopefully they make better choices than I do in every way, but no guarantee on that for sure. But which leads me to my third question, which I'm very excited to ask you, because there You posted something the other day on Instagram, which made me laugh so hard. Also, by the way, you look super cute in it. But I want to talk. Can we talk about your vasectomy?
Oh my God.
I want to know every detail, and I just love it. I love that you're so open and excited about it, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, so for a while I kind of knew that I will say that was another thing with the shooting that I was like, yeah, I really don't think I want kids. I really don't know if for me that's the right journey and everything. And once I kind of realized that, and I like to have a pretty, usually in different circumstances, but it's one of those things where if you're on the road, you're going out a lot, it's like, you have sexual opportunities and you want to enjoy those and take away the worry from those as much as possible. And I've never had like a real, at least not that I know of, like a huge pregnancy scare with someone I've been with, but it was the type of thing where I'm just like, I don't want it. And then I finally had insurance. So, health insurance. So I was like, you know what? Let me just pursue it and see what the situation is. I got a full-time job and it was like, I walked into the place, I got a referral from my doctor, and the guy was like, so why do you want to do it? And I was like, I just don't really want kids. And he was like, all right. Like, it was just like immediately, like, it was so easy. Like, and I've known women that have gotten their tubes tied and stuff, and it does not sound that easy. It sounds like a lot of work. And, I've just seen like one of my girlfriends did the IUD thing, and it just wrecked her. It just like absolutely wrecked her. And so I was like, and I called the office before I went, and I was like, if I have this insurance, how much does it cost to get a vasectomy? And they're like, you'll probably pay like $200. And I'm like, great, I'll pay $200 and I'll never have to worry about this thing. And I did. And, I'm really happy with the decision I made. And then, I forgot I wanted to do like a year anniversary of it just because I feel like it's so funny to be like it's my kid, like talk about it. But, so then I was kind of like, oh, what should I do? And the dumb Oreo thing just kind of happened. Go to my Instagram if you want to know what Emma's talking about.
I loved it. It made me. I watched it like 4 times in a row, and it made me laugh very hard. I thought it was very cute.
So I went in. I was November 1st of, not this year obviously, but last year, and it was so funny too because he walks in, and like I'm like on the table, and he's like, okay, before we start, what kind of music do you like? And I was like, what? And he was like, what kind of music do you like? And I was like, oldies? I don't know. Like, and I'm like, oh, he's going to play music while this happens. So, I actually have the list, I think, on my notes app. I'll tell you exactly what the playlist was.
Amazing.
But, let's see here. Where was it? Let's see. Okay, so here it is. So the first song that played was House of the Rising Sun, which was like so funny. I was like, oh man, I'm either getting a vasectomy or going to Vietnam in a Scorsese movie.
That's amazing.
And then Crazy by Patsy Cline played.
Beautiful, perfect.
And then Little Help from My Friends. And then Venus. And then that was the last song, and then Like a Rolling Stone started playing. Like, as it was done and I was like getting dressed, it was like a Rolling Stone, Boston's More Than a Feeling.
I love that.
And then
gotta have More Than a Feeling in there.
And then What's Love But a Secondhand Emotion. So that's my vasectomy playlist. But
I love that. I have to jump in and tell you, I feel like we have this now. We can bond over this because during the abortion that I got,
okay,
there was the radio was on,
okay,
and
great.
during the abortion doesn't take a whole lot of time, but Toto's Rains in Africa was playing during my abortion.
Great.
Gonna take a lot to take me away from you. And I was just laying there like, this is so surreal. Like it was just amazing. And I've never really gotten to share that with anybody. And I just feel like it's this incredible detail.
It's so funny. I love that.
It was perfect.
And it was so funny too. Like the beginning the beginning chords of House of the Rising Sun started playing, like down, 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 down. And I just started laughing, and he was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, at one point, because another song was playing before that, but when the actual abortion was happening, that was going on. And at one point, it was getting an abortion is this amazing intimate thing with all these women, and they have someone there who just kind of holds your hand, who is just there to like hold your hand, and she like kind of like started looking at the doctor and then looking at me, and then she goes, do we have to have the radio on? And the doctor was like, I am so sorry. She like finally acknowledged it and looked at me and was like, I'm so sorry. I did not. That is so weird for you. And I started laughing, and I was like, it's fine. It's totally. But it was very like, they acknowledged it too, that it was very odd to have Toto in the background. Life choice.
They gave me, so like, obviously very different, but and the fact that like the procedure itself for the vasectomy is really not that bad. Like, you're there, it took 4 songs, and then the rest of it was just me sort of like getting my shit together afterwards. But there was it was like such a funny thing to have in the background. But they give you like I don't remember if it was a Vicodin or a Xanax. I think it might have been a Xanax or something. But and I had a big problem with pills in college. So pills are things that like I kind of like self-regulated that and like didn't really touch them. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take this for this. And so I was like loopy in a way that I hadn't been in a while too. So I was just like kind of like laughing, and like, it's a weird, you can feel stuff happening. It's not, they numb it or you're numbed to it or whatever. But I wasn't under, I was awake and conscious, but it really wasn't that bad. And then, it's the type of thing where it is just like, you see like birth control, all these things, and vasectomies are not perfect. Like, they can self-reverse in some situations, but it's such a small percentage. And, I had to like do, I would say I'm going to do my cum test. Like, you like literally get your semen tested for sterilization, and, pass the test or whatever. So, it is kind of like, it's such a, I understand guys are, and also people think they cut your balls off and stuff. It's just like, people are so stupid. I'm like,
I was there for Alex's. I stayed for Alex's, and it was funny because the doctor was just talking to me about comedy while he was doing it, and he's just like barely paying attention. Yeah. But I was standing right there and watching, and I was like, this is it? This is the whole thing? It's like, it took the whole thing, getting there, going in, the procedure, leaving, took 15 minutes. And I was like, fuck you. I was so upset. Like, I had 3 natural childbirths, and I was like, this is the whole thing. Like, you guys can just go do this, and it's also reversible to some degree. Like, oh yeah. After seeing one done, I was pretty much furious that any man has ever complained about one. Yeah,
it's the type of thing where, I don't want to do it for like that's not what it's about. It really is about like your own, relationship with wanting to have kids or not. But also, it really was, I was just like, this is just such an easy thing for me to do. It's so, and granted, I will say in a way it's kind of not, because you do have to overcome this sort of maybe a little bit of a social stigma. And granted, like, I needed to have health insurance. I don't think I would have done it without health insurance. Or I imagine I probably would have been paying out of pocket more. But it is the type of thing where I'm like, I really feel like if we, when I say we, I'm talking sort of about like men, and specifically like men that want to, fuck and have like relationships. It's like, want to have like non-traditional or whatever you want to say relationships. Like, it's kind of I feel like it should be on us more than it is on women. And the reason why is because it's like, I understand that it's like literally a sensitive area or whatever, but it's like, so it is for y'all too. And it's just the type of thing where it's like, I don't know. To me, it's all, and this is bad because it reinforces gendered stuff, but I'm sort of like, I feel like it could be sort of rebranded as a sort of like, it's manly to think about it and make the plan and like go do the thing and have the scar, or, it's nothing. But, it's that, and it was funny too. Like, my big thing, I was like, was like, how many of these things have you done? And he was like, I'm on like 10,000 or something like that. I'm like, okay, so that's good. And then I was like, be straight with me, doc. Like, how long until I can like come and fuck or whatever? And he was like, young guy like you, I give it 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And so I was like, all right, I'm in. I was like, let's do it.
That's funny because after Alex's, I'm so paranoid about getting pregnant again. I never want to get pregnant again. We got pregnant after we had been together for a while, and I had a miscarriage, and I was like, that's it. I'm done. Yeah. Like, that was so traumatic. And I was just like, and I also like, even when I got pregnant, I was like, all right, well, I'm like half thrilled for this and half I know that this is going to be ridiculous because I've already done this. You know, I know what a baby entails and all that. And I was just like, ugh. And so when I had a miscarriage, I was heartbroken, but I also had mixed feelings about it. But when he got, like, I was so, like, I am no longer attracted to straight men because I'm so afraid of getting pregnant. It's like, after that, like I had always been, you know, pretty, I don't know, pansexual or pretty wide open is what I always called it. But I like, after that was like, I'm just not attracted to anybody who can impregnate me regardless of gender. Like, as long as you have working whatever down there, we're not fucking. And I made him wait like 4 months, and I made him go. He went back in twice to get tested, and we have a microscope, and I checked his sperm myself a couple of times because I was just like, I want to make sure that we can actually, because I just wanted to be able to like really, you know, after our miscarriage, we were really careful with birth control, but even still, I was just so afraid of it, and I had never been, I'd always like never been afraid of it because I always know when I'm ovulating, and every time I got pregnant was like, let's go for it, you know? So, I really felt like, I don't know, it just sort of changed everything about sex for me. And I started for the first time to feel like very nervous and like weird about it. And then once he got like a clean bill, then I was able to be like, okay, now I can relax. Now we can have fun. Now we can just go for it. But yeah, up until like, it took like 4 months of me being like, let's just be really sure. Let's just check one more time. Let's just have him look again. But now it's so freeing, and I can see how I love that. I want to like buy a microscope now. I have one. I've had one since I was 15. It's what I requested for my 15th birthday. We're talking about AP classes. I was like a total.
Emma. Wow.
Yeah. I had a lot of sperm to look at, and but yeah,
high school.
You know how it is. But yeah, I wanted to be like super, super sure. So I kept being like, just one more time. Let's just look again. And now it's like, I imagine as a man, because like I have 3 sons, you know, and who are teenagers. And that's one thing I've told them is like, you said, like, your job is to make sure you don't get someone who doesn't want to be pregnant. And it is your responsibility, because all you have, if you just ejaculate and then you're done. And then the person who got pregnant they have to go through, no matter what, whether they keep it or not, or there's a miscarriage or whatever, just a huge amount of physical pain and agony. And it's
and anguish and stress. And it's just like, you know, do they even feel comfortable bringing it up? And like, you know, that's the type of thing where I'm like, again, it's just one of those things where it's like, let's just take that worry away out of this equation. And you know, there'll be more worries to worry about, of course, but you know, it really was something that it was one of those, like a lot of things, I think comedians do this specifically, but it's like, it's something that I joked about long enough to where I was like, this isn't a joke. This is I want this. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. One of my kids has been he already has been like, I just want to get a vasectomy. I just think he kind of knows he's autistic, and he's been like, I don't want kids. I think it would be difficult, which I actually think he would be a wonderful father, but he feels like it might be really difficult for him, and you know, probably would be for him and his partner in some ways. But he's been like, you know, for a couple years been like, I'll probably get a vasectomy as soon as I can. And I've been like, okay, that's, you know, obviously if you know that already, and if somebody knows they want kids, obviously that's not an option. But I feel like a lot of men don't do it more for this we're talking about dealing with mortality. Like, I think for men, a lot of times that, like, when my partner got a vasectomy, some of the people in his family were like, what about your lineage? It's
right.
Like, we're monkeys and
save the best for
we're
last,
dust.
you know?
We're dust. Yeah, exactly. And it's just so funny because, like, you know, I have 3 sons and, you know, I'm kind of, I don't know, the lineage thing. I get that that's some people's deal, that they're like, this is what I'm leaving behind. And I always feel like, I hope it's more meaningful than just these 3 people. You know, I hope they're cool people and I'm glad I made them, but also it's not that, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like
I'm like, you know, when you go camping and they're like, take in, take out. That's what my theory is with
leave no trace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was never here.
I like that, actually. Leave no trace. That's kind of a beautiful way to live. Well, this has been super lovely, Allen. I really love talking to you. And,
this is great.
Thanks for doing the podcast. Plug all your stuff real fast. Where can people find you?
Yeah, okay. So my half hour now is also on CBS All Access, so you can watch it there. Allen Strickland Williams. I'm at Totally Allen on everything. My website's allenstricklandwilliams.com. I've got some things in the mix, but they're kind of still percolating. So, yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been Emma Arnold with What's Next. Please check out Allen everywhere that he is. He's wonderful. His half hour is fabulous. And next week we will have on the pod, I don't know, Alex, you'll have to insert it here. I can't remember, which you have to do every week, and I'm sorry.
Valerie Tossi.
But thanks for listening. Bye.